Welcome to the WanderLearn show. I'm your host, Tapon. In this episode, I interview Paul Koch, who's the CEO and founder of a Trimaran company called Rapido. For those who don't know, a Trimaran is a type of sailboat that has three different parts of the boat that are touching the water, as opposed to a catamaran, which has two, and as opposed to a monohull that has just one. I went to Vietnam to a shipyard to where they're constructing these trimarans right there near Ho Chi Minh City, on the outskirts of the city. And I really want to dive into it because one of my long-term goals is to sail extensively throughout the world. And I've been investigating the whole thing, and I've determined that Rapido is certainly one of the top contenders of one of the best boats out there. So I wanted to talk with the founder and the CEO to find out what's behind it and why aren't trimarans more popular. So enjoy this episode with Paul. What are some of the advantages of trimarans versus monohulls, which is just one?
The real advantage in the early days was the trailability of the boat, because they worked much better as a trailable boat than a catamaran did, because you could have a trimaran that was, say, 20 feet wide that would fold up to 8 foot and go on a trailer and be trailable and take it down the road. And that's why the initial most popular trimarans on the market were Corsair.
And you actually kept that folding ability with your much, much larger.
Yeah, on the 40 and the 50, we also fold up to go in the marina, which is the other advantage of a folding trimaran.
Right.
But the original reason why trimarans became popular at all was
the foldability.
Trailability of
right. Trailability.
And then it had the other plus that they were very good sailing performance.
Right.
So, they're much better upwind than a catamaran. They tack better than a catamaran. They do all the good things that a monohull does, but it have the advantage of being a stable platform.
Can you quantify when you say that it's better upwind than a catamaran? Can you quantify roughly?
Yeah, I would say that we would point 10 degrees higher and go faster than any catamaran on the market.
Okay, got it. So even if you're pointing at the same degree, you are still going faster.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And then the fact that you have even more leeway that allows you.
Yeah, it's just the configuration of the hull.
The physics.
But trimaran will tack much better than a catamaran because it's basically just rocking from being a monohull, going from one side to the other, with it stabilized by the float or the armor.
Right.
So it tacks faster, goes upwind, points higher, and just generally performs better. So I think the biggest plus for the trimaran is the performance. And the other thing is the sea friendliness at sea. They're much smoother ride in rough weather and in choppy conditions, especially upwind, than a catamaran. Much better.
One of the things that you haven't mentioned yet, but to me is one of the big attractions of the trimaran, is that it is effectively unsinkable.
Yeah.
We've heard the Titanic say unsinkable. So explain that.
Well, you got so much reserve buoyancy everywhere, like the floats or the armors that some people call them, are four separate watertight compartments each side. So, the chances of holding every single one of those compartments is very remote for a start. And then each one of those armors will support the weight of the boat. So, you could fill the main hull up with water and still be afloat and not sink.
And you could foot the boat upside down?
Yeah. Sure, and it'll have the same solution. It's upside down, floating upside down. The other thing is we go one step further. We've made a policy when we build our boats that we don't have any penetrations below the waterline in any bulkhead in the main hull, for instance. So the main hull is also split into 4 or 5 separate watertight compartments. Below, not completely watertight because you got to go through doors into cabins and whatever, but below the waterline they're watertight.
What happens if a catamaran flips upside down? Because I think
if it's a well-built, well-designed catamaran, it should also float if they have enough buoyancy in the ends of the boat and have watertight bulkheads. But unfortunately, a lot of the production catamarans on the market don't. They don't care about it. They sink.
Simon,
unfortunately.
What can you do to have that confidence and know whether your particular boat is capable? Like, how would somebody know the
Well, ask the question, have you got any separate watertight compartments that'll give you the buoyancy if the boat was upside down or whole at the engine room, if the shaft seal leaked or you rip the rudder off, you're going to sink. I don't want to start mentioning names, but there are quite a few well-known beak production catamaran builders that sink regularly because they don't think about it or care about it.
I heard you once say that the only thing that you would be afraid of is a fire.
Yeah, sure. That's what I worry. The only thing I would worry about.
What can you do to mitigate that possibility? Because I was watching a video about somebody who used acetone and then all of a sudden their whole boat.
Yeah, well, they blew up. Yeah, they were cleaning it.
Yeah, cleaning.
Actually, I spoke by it.
It was like an electrician was working while somebody else was using acetone. The acetone.
No, the doctors, they put one of
the... Yeah, right. Yeah,
that came out in an interview.
Okay, so...
At some point. But yeah, they told me that horrible story.
Yeah.
Don't have any gas on board, obviously, is one thing. We don't need to have gas stoves anymore because the induction cooking is so good.
Right.
And with the lithium-ion batteries, the new lithium-ion batteries are pretty safe. Right. Very safe, actually. But
now, speaking about the induction stoves, let's talk a little bit about the future of sailing. To me, it's kind of a paradox. You've got free renewable resources that are abundant in a sailboat. You've got solar, you got wind, and you got hydropower,
Yeah.
So you've got all this renewable energy just like covering the boat, and yet we use fossil fuels to power the motor. It just, to me, it's like...
I guess so.
In 100 years, it will look kind of strange.
Sure. But the reason why it happens still is because the boats don't sail well enough a lot of the time to actually generate enough electricity from regeneration to make it work. But that's another big plus with our Trimarans is the fact that we've already got at least, we've got 3 examples out there sailing right now with no fossil fuels on board.
Tell me about...
Well, there's a guy in New Zealand who's got a Rapido 40 that's got, it's now got an e-propulsion set up and he has not ever had a fuel on board. This is just, There's another guy that sailed from here who's currently in Japan, sailed all the way to Japan. He's been cruising for the last 6 months with no fossil fuels on board. He had a ocean bowl 12 kilowatt setup with solar panels and gets good.
Rapido 40 as well?
Yes, a Rapido 40. Currently building another one right now with those 12 kilowatt electric outboards from e-propulsion again. I'm giving e-propulsion a bit of an ad here, but they have a very good equipment, and the big advantage of that is we've mounted the two outboards in the main hull so that they retract completely out of the water when you're sailing, so there's no drag at all. They're really good battery backup, so it'll have a very long range. It'll probably be able to motor for 6 or 8 hours without thinking about too much. And it's got good regeneration as well. So it works on our boats, it seems. It doesn't always work on other boats because they just can't regenerate enough. They don't sail fast enough to.
Oh, so it's about
the speed of.
What about the surface area? The fact that you have 3 holes, maybe you can put more solar panels, or not necessarily.
Well, yeah, you can. You can add more solar panels, but solar's great during the day and in the sunny places. But you can't rely on it 100%.
Where would you not take a Rapido boat? In other words, how far south or north would you be like, you know what, that's kind of pushing the limits?
We've had some guy, not necessarily on Rapidos, but I know one guy on Corsair, or 2 guys on Corsairs that have gone to the Arctic Circle. I believe. I'm not sure if they've ever gone to Antarctica. Actually, I built a boat once for the designer of Catamarans that I used to build. He sailed to the Arctic Circle on his Catamaran. But
what about Bouvet Island, for example? I don't know if you know where that is. Bouvet. Okay,
yeah.
But it's in between South Africa and Antarctica. It's a little island by Norway. It's one of the most remote islands in the world. It's covered in ice, but it's
if you're brave enough to sail there, go for it. motor it. The crew can do it.
Well, what do you, because it seems that a lot of the Arctic vessels tend to be monohulls that brave those conditions.
Yeah, they could try to build them out of steel and stuff like that to smash into icebergs. But the advantage of a trimaran is it's pretty slight compared to those boats. And yeah, sure, if you smash into an iceberg at 20 knots, you probably do some damage, but you're not going to sink. You probably demolish the front of your float or the bow of the main hull or whatever. But obviously you're not wanting to bash into icebergs at 20 knots. So I wouldn't be worried about sailing a boat anyway. They're structurally extremely strong. They're built to go around the world, all of them.
Right.
From a 40-footer, 50, 60, whatever.
Tell us about the composite material that you use, and why do you make it here in Vietnam?
The reason we're making it in Vietnam is a little bit historical. Originally, I came to Vietnam with Corsair Marine. I brought Corsair from California to Vietnam mainly because of the cost of labor was killing us in America, and the cost of insurance and the cost of all the other workers' comp and all the other stuff in California, as you probably know.
Yeah, I'm from California.
Yeah, so we came here for economic reasons originally, but that was 19 years ago now, I think. But I quickly found that the Vietnamese were very good workers and they learn fast. And once you teach them how to do something properly, they keep doing it properly,
Yeah, which is not always easy to find.
Yeah, sure. So in the Corsair days, we were doing some carbon fiber stuff, but not a lot. But we slowly built that up and built a few carbon fiber trimarans. And then when we started Rapido 11 years ago already, it was from day one we thought we'd build carbon fiber boats because we knew how to do it. And it's also the lightest, strongest way of building a light fast boat. And so, since then we've developed it even further. We build all our own masts, all our own foils. We do everything everything we can out of pre-preg and use the autoclave to cure it. And you end up with a super strong, super light structures.
Stronger than steel.
Yeah, sure.
Right. And far lighter.
And very durable.
Right.
There's actually a company in Norway building ferries out of carbon fiber because they figured that they last 2 or 3 times longer than aluminium ferries, that were doing, these are big passenger ferries. And they proved that it made sense to build them out of carbon because they're just more durable. Just keep going and going and going and they don't fatigue.
Right. As somebody who does a lot of wilderness backpacking, I know the technology of having a lightweight fabric. It allows you to carry far less weight and allows you to go much faster.
Sure.
Your propulsion, your physical walking.
Automatically.
It's just physics. And I can see the appeal when it comes to and trimarans and as a material. So my question, Paul, is we've talked a lot about the advantages of all the things that the trimaran and the Rapido has. The question is yet it only makes up 4% of the market, the trimarans, compared to, anywhere between 20, 40%, let's just say 30% is catamarans, and about 60% is roughly is monohulls.
Yeah.
So why, if they're so great, that they have not captured more than 4% market share?
Not enough smart people in the world, I guess.
Well, that's why we're here. To help them.
No, it's, they're expensive.
Why are they expensive?
Well, because they're quite complicated to build, especially the folding ones. They're very complex.
Why are they I know maybe it's a stupid question, but it's just like, to me, a catamaran is, there's a certain amount of material costs and there's a molding.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. I mean, why?
Well, I guess for the space, the accommodation that you get, and for the cost of the construction, I guess trimarans are quite a bit more expensive to build than catamarans.
Okay.
There's a lot of load in the beams that hold the boat together, so they need to be pre-preg carbon fiber, and that's expensive to do. And, if you wanted the high performance boat, you need to have a carbon mast, a carbon boom, and carbon foils, sea foils, and carbon everything. Carbon tables, well, the carbon table, sure, that's just a nice thing to have. It's not completely necessary, but it saves weight.
Sure.
And we try to save weight everywhere we can.
Yes.
Weight, performance, and efficiency. And
backpackers shave off the toothbrush into it.
And, we've become very good at using pre-preg carbon fiber, and we make carbon fiber drawers because it makes sense, but because we can do it. And to be honest, the technique we've developed, they're not that much more expensive to make that way than to make the old-fashioned way.
Right.
And they look great.
Yeah, they do.
And they work.
Yeah. Okay, so one reason that Trimarans haven't done as well
is the cost, and it's really the room. A lot of people who buy cruising boats, all they care about is what they look like at the marina when they go to the boat show.
Right.
And think, oh, this is a great looking floating house here, and they don't really care how it feels when they're at sea. And once you get out in the middle of the ocean, then you start realizing, oh, shit, a trimaran is so much more comfortable to be on than a catamaran.
Why is it more comfortable?
It's just the motion of the boat generally.
But some people say that when you're going fast at, let's say, 20 knots, it's just a more uncomfortable ride than if you're just going at
20 knots and any boat's uncomfortable. Yeah, that's a fact. But it's not. But performance in strong winds is where you win on the tri. It's on the light winds. When it's blowing 5 knots, you're still sailing, whereas all the other catamaran guys are motoring. And if you haven't got a diesel engine, you ain't going anywhere.
Right.
So that's another reason why the electric can get really taken off on catamarans, because
you can always reef a little bit so that if you don't want to go 20 knots, if you slow down, go down to 10.
Yeah.
And then you have them.
Yeah, you could have a speed of 15 knots, as that's fast as I'm going to go, or whatever. So sometimes 20 knots the boat is super comfortable. Other times 20 knots you're getting shit beat out here, depending on which way you go. Downwind, not a prop. I'll do 20 knots all day, every day.
Right.
But going upwind,
bang.
Yeah, on our 60, we'll go upwind at 18 knots. It's not fun. It's fun if you want to go upwind in a hurry, but it's not fun if you're cruising.
Right.
So you slow down. Yeah, right. You put a rig in it, slow down,
and then you'll still have
you're still going.
You'll mitigate the discomfort.
Yeah, sure. Just go upwind at 10 knots instead of 15 plus or whatever.
So you're saying that some people, they obsess about the living space, which is, I've heard the flip side of the argument, Paul, is that people often remind you that
I spend 80% of my time sitting in an anchor. That's what they all say. Yes. But I'll put up with it.
Okay. Because in the end,
they're not that uncomfortable. They're actually very comfortable boats, what they are.
Yeah. And the fact that you can, on the 40 and what was it, the other one, the 50?
50.
Can bring their...
Yeah, they can.
It's about 20-minute process to fold up your arms.
It's a little bit, like on the Corsair Trimarans, we could do it in 2 or 3 minutes. But, they're completely optimized for trailing, put on a trail.
Right.
And just really put a lot of effort in. Now, these boats are a lot bigger and the systems are a lot heavier. And so it's a little bit more work. And
Now you have tried to address the concern of, let's say, the living space by having the Rapido 53X.
Yeah, SS. Yeah.
Which is wider, does not have the folding capacity, folding arms, but it is much more livable.
Sure.
And also one of your competitors, Neil, Trimarans, they also have a kind of a similar design, I would say.
Well, similar.
In the sense that they have the master cabin on the main floor, if you want to call it that. So, how do you think that is maybe where you will diversify and go into more space in the future, or where do you see it going?
I would see us going somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Compromising a little bit.
Okay.
The new design that we've done is the 63, which is sort of somewhere between the 53XS and a normal 60. So we made the cabin a little bit wider and it works better on the 60 because it's a bigger boat.
Right.
So, but we've managed to get a lot more accommodation into the 63 than we had in the 60 without going to the extreme of the 53 XS. And, the 53 XS came about because a guy that owned a Neil 47 came to us and said, I don't want to give up the accommodation, but I want a lot more performance. Obviously, you can't I need it too. So
is that what you would separate? If those people who are looking at Neil is looking at Rapido, would you say that the main difference is performance?
Sure. Yeah, I without bragging, I would say we're twice as fast as a Neil.
Okay.
Of any size, So a 40 versus a 43 is we're twice as fast.
Safety issues. About the same?
Yeah.
Comparable?
I think Neil's are pretty good boats.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I wouldn't own one.
Okay. Will you say that electrical power generation and regenerative power is going to be the default in the next 5-10 years?
I think there's going to be a lot more boats with it. And maybe they'll have a small backup generator as well.
Mm.
But some guys don't want the small backup generator. They're just happy to
take the risk.
Take the risk.
Right.
Yeah, because the batteries are getting better and better every month.
Right.
Almost.
Right.
So you're getting, like the one we're just doing right now in the factory is something just started, so you can't really see a lot, but it's got two 23 kilowatt batteries that only weigh, I think 180 kilos each. So you got 46 kilowatts of battery power, and the boat will be easily pushed by one 12 kilowatt outboard. We've actually got two. But, they'll probably just run them at half throttle, yep. But they also regenerate. I think with the two of them regenerating, you got 2.4 kilowatts coming back in when you sail on. So, if you say you leave a marina, your motor out, you're probably going to have your battery fully charged again in a couple of hours. But if you need to motor for 8 hours or something, you can do it. Just throttle back.
Mm.
Like we found on the 40 in Japan, if we ran it at 500 watts, we were doing 3 knots in no wind. If we ran it 1 kilowatt, we could do 5 knots. That's 1 kilowatt of power. It was just almost nothing. If you want to go at 8 knots, you use a lot more power. But if you're happy to just motor along at 5 knots, you can go all day. Yes.
Paul, another issue that I've heard critiquing the Trimarans, and specifically, let's say, Rapidos, is that it's a sailboat for advanced sailors, for people who have true seamanship. You're a real person who knows this stuff. It cannot be handled by beginners. It's too complicated. Okay, defend yourself. Explain. Why do you think it's rubbish?
Because the boat's a lot more stable than the average monohull for a start. So, you're
not heeling
over. And sure, you need to learn when to reef. So if it's blowing 20 knots or something, you've got to put a reef in. But other than that, it's the same as any other sailboat.
So where does that criticism come from?
People are scared, basically. They're scared of the performance, I think, a lot of the time. Like the guy that bought the first Rapido 40. I actually saw him a couple of weeks ago, and he loves his boat. He's had it for 3-4 years already.
Was he a novice when he got it?
He had sailed maybe a month in his life.
Okay.
He was 70 years old at the time, 71 or something, right? I sailed with him from here to Terengganu in Malaysia. It's 300 miles away. That was the first sort of delivery leg. And then he single-handed from there to Phuket, which is over 1,000 miles away.
Single-handed?
Yeah. Straight afterwards, and no dramas at all. Yeah, sure, he made a few, novice mistakes along the way.
Like what?
Dragged a couple of times,
Like what?
Well, just anchor dragging because didn't anchor properly or whatever. Other than that, no, nothing dangerous.
Okay.
Yeah, but the guy's an engineer and he's a very smart guy, and
so why did you
spend his life installing ski lifts? So he'd been hanging out of helicopters and all sorts of shit in his life, but he was.
It's interesting. I always find it because it seems like again, going from my backpacking experience, we have these long trails that people go on. And oftentimes people start with the Appalachian trails, the long trail, because it's the easiest one. So it's interesting to find people like that gentleman who went from nothing straight to a Rapido Trimaran. It just seems like I would think that 99% of your customers come to you after they've tried at least
he'd sail a monohull a little bit. Right. Oh, and that was his experience.
But a month.
Right?
Not there too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and he's not the only one. The guy in Japan currently had a Corsair 24 was his previous, but okay, it's a Trimaran, and it was not nowhere near as fast as a Rapido 40, but that was his only sailing experience.
So who should not get a Rapido? Somebody who just wants to, sail in circles in the Caribbean?
Who shouldn't get one? I think everyone should have one. But no, I guess if you're afraid of going over 10 knots or something like that, well, maybe you shouldn't get.
Why would you be afraid of going over 10?
I don't know. People just sometimes they're like if they haven't had any previous multi-hull experience or sailing experience, it's intimidating to them to go fast in a sailboat.
Is it true that the Trimarans can keel more than a catamaran?
Oh, they feel a little bit more, but it's a good thing. It warns you what's going on. It tells you.
Right. No, but I'm saying at what point do they hit the flipping?
Way longer than a catamaran. They're much more stable because they're much wider than the average catamaran the same size. So it takes a lot more to tip a trimaran over than it takes to tip a catamaran over.
Which again brings up
and you get way more warning. Like, you should be reefing on a trimaran just because of the way the boat heeled over a little bit.
Right.
Whereas a catamaran, you'd be sailing stable, and then suddenly pops up.
Right.
If you're pushing it too hard.
Right.
More catamarans capsize than trimarans by a lot, especially when they're raced.
Right. Future of you have the 63, which is but looking out into 2030, where do you envision?
I'll be too old by then. Don't worry about it. Maybe we'll probably put a little bit more accommodation into our 50 than we have at the moment. Just
where would you squeeze it in?
Only just making the cabin a little bit wider. I'm not going to the extreme of the 53 XS.
Right.
But which is fine, but it doesn't need to be as wide as that to gain the same benefit.
Right.
So,
just a meter more, maybe.
Yeah, a meter more than it currently is would be more than enough to get a really comfortable, livable boat.
Because the 50, the main advantage over the 40 is that you're high.
It's a drier boat. So.
Did you say dry?
Drier.
Okay, dry.
When you're sailing. Because you're more protected behind the cabin, you're up higher.
Right. So you're not getting splashed and all that stuff. Yeah. Right. So that's
But 50 and 60 are great boats to sail.
Yeah.
It's super dry and they're just, they're good ocean going boats.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, I'm impressed with how long have you been, when did you first learn how to sail? How old were you?
I was quite old.
Oh, really?
That was about 18, I guess.
Oh, okay. It's not that old.
No, relatively speaking, I know.
Where was that? Where were you?
In Australia.
Australia.
My father actually introduced me to sailing when I was about 6, I guess. But we lived in a little bit in the outback in Australia, so to speak. So there was only a lake there and you could sail on the lake. And I remember sailing with him when I was about 6 years old on a lake thinking, this is really cool. Like this when I was about that old,
Yeah.
And then we moved from that place where they had the lake to a dairy farm. And I never got to go near a sailing boat till I think I was about 14. I started building a sailing dinghy because I got sick of waiting.
Oh, last question. That reminds me. Dinghy. What dinghy would you recommend for your Rapido, and where would you place it? I've seen some people put it on top of a Rapido, like on the net.
Deck. On the net, yeah.
Other people put it underneath the net.
I haven't had it under the net.
Okay.
Under the net.
I thought that was a strange configuration.
No, No,
Maybe it's just that port. But anyway,
it was under the solar panel on one of the 60s.
okay, maybe no.
But
Yeah. Anyway, any particular one that you recommend? I was looking at one that's an actual rowboat that has forgot the name of it. I'm blanking out right now. But
wow, if you got more money, then you know what to do with. Get an OC tender are pretty good. The ones that Sailing La Vagabond I got.
and where
They're made in New Zealand. They're a carbon fiber, super lightweight dinghy. They work well. The other one that we use a lot recently is it's called a True Kit.
Okay.
Also from New Zealand. It's a catamaran dinghy, and it's what I really like about it is you can board over the front of it really easily if you're swimming.
Okay.
So I could go for snorkeling or whatever. You can just crawl over the front of the dinghy without do gymnastics and do backflips and stuff like that when you.
And how do you bring it on board?
It's 35 kilos and literally drag it over the side of the boat if you wanted to, or hang it on davits out the back.
Okay.
Yeah, and we used to fit a very lightweight motor, and now electric outboard's the way to go, really, to a certain extent.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's what I would use. They're just light and stable and simple.
Excellent. Well, Paul, again, thank you again.
And then no worries.
All right, this is France Tapon encouraging you to wander and learn.
Thank you for listening all the way to the end of this WanderLearn show. I am now using Substack.com to deliver my podcast and weekly newsletter, so please subscribe to my free Substack newsletter by using the link in the show notes. Or, if you've got a good memory, browse to ftapon.substack.com. Why ftapon? Well, it's my first initial and my last name. In fact, whatever social media app you use, including YouTube, if you search for ftapon, you'll find me, so connect with me. My website is also ftapon.com. Do you have an idea, question, or comment? Leave me an anonymous voicemail at speakpipe.com/ftapon. Lastly, become a WanderLearner by joining my paid subscriptions on Substack or patreon.com/ftapon. Wherever you join, I will reward you regularly. Tell your friends to subscribe to the WanderLearn show. If you review the WanderLearn show, I'll share your review on a future episode. This is France Tapon, encouraging you to wander and learn.